Hey everybody. Sorry for the late video. Usually I get to these a little bit sooner on Sundays, but I had a pretty busy weekend. So on Sundays I like to do my meta breakers. These are best of one decks in standard that were successfully piloted to Mythic with at least a 60% win rate and at least 50 games. And it's just kind of a fun little thing to do every weekend. And so we're going to keep this one a little bit shorter because I don't have a whole lot of time to make a big long video. But this one was Orzhov Sephiroth by Spork Horse, and went 99 and 67 for a 60% win rate into Mythic. And this is basically, it's very similar to the Raise the Pest deck, that's or Orzhov Bats, whatever you want to call it. But it's kind of going more towards the Orzhov Aristocrats build, where you're trying to sacrifice and win through the Vengeful Blood Witch, because Sephiroth, which we got in Final Fantasy, is kind of another duplication of the same effect. So whenever another creature dies, target opponent loses 1 life and you gain 1 life. So every time you're sacrificing one of your creatures, you're kind of getting these Vengeful Blood Witch pings. And you've got like the Umbral Collar Zealot is one that we got in Edge of Eternities that helps you sacrifice instead of having to use like Bartolome from Lost Caverns of Ixalan. You've got Sacrifice Fodder of like Infestation Sage. This one's running the Nezumi Link Breaker. Same thing, when it dies, it creates a 1/1 that you can sacrifice. The Snarling Gorehound is giving you the Surveil so that you can get things into your graveyard. Since this one is not running the life gain of the Orzhov Bats build, it's a less of a good place for Benavides or whatever, the black-white one that explores whenever you gain life. This is leaning more into the sacrifice route. And then you have the Timeline Kohler, which you can bring back with the warp ability. And because you have the ability to cast from your graveyard, you can sack it and keep warping it back for 2 life. So you can get this recurring fodder for your deck. And we've got Enduring Innocence, which then triggers every time that you're playing any of your creatures outside of Sephiroth. And then you can bring it all back from the graveyard with Raise the Past. So this one, I mentioned it, but wasn't able to cover it in last week's Best of 1, Best of 3 meta review, and just wanted to make sure that you're aware of it. It is a good counter to decks like the Azorius Control. There are some tough matchups for it. We'll see if it gets into the top 8 tomorrow. I'll be doing my meta review on Monday. And but yeah, you know, it's even if it's not in the top 8 in the Best of 1 meta review, it's definitely something that you can take to Mythic. And it's a lot of fun, you know, setting up these lines and hitting for a whole bunch of these little ping damages can be a really fun way to win the game. Second up is the Gruul Landfall. It's a bit of a stretch, I think, to really call this one different than the mono green Landfall. The biggest changes are, instead of running the enchantment that can attack and trigger off of the counters of like Mossborn Hydra, we've got the World Soul's Rage as a way to hit for X damage, taking advantage of all of the lands that we have, and then also putting X lands from your hand or your graveyard onto the battlefield tapped can be a way to, because like all of these escape tunnels, Fable Passages, Terramorphic Expanse, Evolving Wilds, whatever you're using to trigger the double landfall with the Traveling Chocobo to make a gigantic Mossborn Hydra, it's very easy to go pick up a single red, right? So it's not much of an inclusion to add the World Soul's Rage. And this one was done by Udai, went 77 and 29 for a 73% win rate into Mythic, and was including the Ice-Till Explorer, which we got in Edge of Eternities. You can play an additional land on each one of your turns, giving you even more landfalls that are possible, and then you may play lands from your graveyard, and every time that a land enters, you mill a card. So it just leans more heavily into getting more of those landfall triggers, and kind of helps with where the deck can kind of fizzle out, which is when you run out of land drops to make. But Tifa can explode into a giant threat. If you haven't done that, you protect your Hydra or your Tifa with the Snakeskin Veil, use the Land of War Elves to ramp up into that. And then the Saw's Chocobo is okay. It's not amazing. It's not as good as the Tifa and the Mossborn Hydra, but you can still get it into a sizable threat for a 1-drop especially. And then Bristly Bill, you know, you get up to 5 mana, you can double all the +1/+1 counters on your Hydra or on your Chocobo and win the game that way. So I know it's not a huge difference from mono green. I just want you to be aware that if you are running the mono green, maybe consider doing the Gruul Landfall, because 73% win rate is crazy. especially over 100 games. And then the third and final list that I want to make sure that you're aware of is the Orzhov Ketramose list. And this one, just also to talk about it a little bit, Ketramose cares about cards that are in exile. Warp is something that you can do that then ends up with the card in exile. So it kind of has some synergies with Ketramose, and I expect to see a little bit more crossover happen given enough time. But this one, it's an Orzhov control list that's been around for a while. This one's leaning on Elspeth as like a win condition. It's got Ugin in here as well. You can kind of diversify whatever threats that you want. The end exiles, the deadly cover-up exiles, the strategic betrayal exiles. So you've got a whole bunch of exile through that. You've also got the Seam Rip and the Ghost Vacuum, which exile. Feed the Cycle gives you the destroy target creature or planeswalker at instant speed. It's kind of like a murder. You've got the Shoot the Sheriff for a little bit of interaction, as well as the Duress to make your opponents discard. Split Up for the one cheap 3-costed sweeper. You could definitely, I think, bring in the Star Cage. It's a pretty good fit. This one was by Adster went 44 and 27 for a 62% win rate. So you could definitely take this in a couple of different directions. The Arch Enemy's Charm we've started to see a little bit more in mono black, and it's made its way into this list. It's got some versatility to it, so it's an instant for 3 black. Exile target creature or planeswalker, return 1 or 2 target creature and or planeswalkers from your graveyard to your hand, or put 2+1/+1 counters on target creature you control and it gains lifelink. So it can give you a little bit of stabilization or removal, just kind of take your pick. Usually we see this in more of a mono black payoff because, triple pip black is difficult to do. So it could be a little bit more difficult, but there's only 2 of them in this list. And really everything is just centered around the eventually getting Ketramose to pop off, right? Being able to trigger the zapping your opponent and drawing your cards lends itself pretty well to the control archetype, right? And then, so we've got a lot of that interaction to slow things down. We've got a couple sweepers with like the Split Up and the Deadly Cover Up. And then we've got the win conditions of Elspeth, Beza for a little bit of counter synergies. Unholy Annex helps us get the card advantage as well. And then you can create 2 6/6s if you have the Elspeth in play. So like there's some fun little synergies in the deck. And then Ugin feels a little bit out of place to me, right? I mean, like you don't have a whole lot of colorless things to trigger the Ugin. You've got like the 1 Ghost Vacuum. But just gaining 3 life and drawing a card for the uptick on Ugin is, I guess, enough for it to be a win condition in and of itself in control. So definitely not the final version of Ketramose that we'll see, but I just wanted you to, get it in your mind that, we may start to see Ketramose decks rise up in popularity. It certainly feels like we have enough tools to make it into a viable archetype. So with that, I hope you've had a wonderful weekend. I hope that week 1 of the Edge of Eternities has treated you well. I've been having an absolute blast as always. And tomorrow I'll be talking about week 2, kind of going over like what has shifted in the meta, what we're starting to see kind of rise and fall, and try to kind of walk through. It's right now is chaos, right? There's a lot going on at the beginning of a set, and we'll see over time what archetype reigns supreme, right? Given some bit, but we probably won't be able to determine that until the end of August, at least in best of 1. So best of 3 may be a different story. Who knows? Anyway, I hope this finds you well. I hope it gives you some ideas, and the deck list will be in the description. And if you have a Ketramose deck that you're running, feel free to share it with the community. Let us know what's going on. I'm a little bit busier than I usually have been around this sort of thing, so we'll see. I haven't quite figured out when I'm going to be doing the community deck tech, but that should be coming down the line. Give me a couple weeks to figure it out. And yeah, I'll see you next Sunday to talk about if there's any other archetypes that have kind of popped up. A lot of the Teamer Battle Crier kind of came and went. It's certainly another deck that I've seen some people take that's centered on getting all of those 4 power creatures to play for free with the Roaming Thrones. So there's definitely some archetypes that still exist kind of in the new standard space. But we'll see all of these ones that I've talked about in last week's meta review were the majority of the decks that I was seeing going into Mythic. These were just some of the outliers that I think were worth talking about that caught my attention. So definitely haven't covered the full spectrum of what's out there yet. And again, we'll talk about more of it tomorrow. So take care, everybody. If you are a member of the Arstall community, if you're in my Discord, appreciate you. If you're not, you're welcome to join. And then, as always, the best way to help support me is by becoming a YouTube member. So thank you for those who have become my YouTube members, all 11 of you. And I will see you all tomorrow. I'm done rambling. Take care, everybody.